I don't know if Saturday's loss to Michigan State was a bottoming out, because really, I think it's pretty telling that when your rival comes to your arena, and I won't say take over, there were a couple thousand Spartan fans there, and there always are, but to not score the last 7 minutes of a game, to have an opposing fan base come in and chant at Doug McDaniel to do his homework, chant the go green, go white, that was pretty darn loud, and not even have those things be in the top 5, top 10, top whatever, most disheartening things of this season is pretty telling to me on where this campaign has gone. And where we'll start tonight is where we're at with Juwan Howard, because again, I think for weeks, there's been a lot of angst. There's been a lot of anger towards the direction of this program, which the direction being rock bottom and seemingly still finding ways to reach new lows, whether it be 30-point losses on the road, disheartening games where you blow an opportunity at home. I know we're getting to the point in March or in February where this is where you secure your postseason future, and Michigan hasn't had one. Season was arguably over before the new year even started. So when we get to the conversation about what Juwan Howard's future is, and I guess I'll just, because I do have some things to say about it, but while I formulate maybe a nicer way to say them, Clayton, just where are you at now with all of this? Because it's not only is it not getting better, it's getting worse in a lot of areas. And I really do question, especially when you hear Ward Manuel come out last week and say, he hasn't thought about making a change, focused on supporting Juwan Howard and Michigan basketball. Just where are we at with the state of this program? Because I got to be honest, I'm really, and it's been this way for a while for me, I'm really having a hard time seeing a path forward here.
Yeah, well, our Chris Ballas and I talked about Ward Manuel's comments last week, and, I didn't read much into those because, look, what's he supposed to say? I thought, he's not going to say he's going to fire him if they lose on Saturday. He said the comments were on Wednesday, I believe. He's not going to come out and say if they don't win 4 or 5 of their next however many games, he's gone, or if they don't win the Big Ten tournament. Basically, he's always been a guy who evaluates at the end of the season. I don't think this is going to be any different. I know we've seen a couple changes throughout the country, including with Michigan's rival, Ohio State, going with Chris Holtmann. They Diebler, the interim coach, they beat Purdue the other day. So maybe you could look at that and be like, hey, maybe maybe you can get that interim bump or whatever. But no, I don't see anything happening before the end of the year. They still have 5 regular season games left. They're going to play in the first set of games, likely as the 14 seed on the Wednesday night in the Big Ten tournament in Minneapolis. And obviously that gives you an opportunity to at least do something. We saw Ohio State do something with that opportunity a year ago with Chris Holtmann. Now they didn't turn it around this year, but they were, they got a little bit more back on track a year ago. I wouldn't predict that from this Michigan team. But to me, it's not that things are getting worse or, they might get a little better. It's that they're staying the same and that it's been really bad all season long. And I know they're going to get Doug McDaniel back on the road in a couple games. That will certainly help their chances to pick up a win or two at the end of the year. But schedule's still in that tough part of the year with Purdue over the weekend. You got to go to Northwestern on Thursday night. So it's challenging. And it's challenging to win games when you don't score in the last 7 minutes. It's challenging to win games when you turn it over 22 times. In the last 7 minutes, really, or the 9 possessions following Michigan tying the game up at 63-63, they had 5 turnovers, 2 missed, forced long jump shots. One of them was a long 2. The other one was a step back 3 from Doug McDaniel. And then they missed the Will Cheddar 3 was one of those. And I can't remember. Oh, no, Doug rushed in and missed a layup as well. Those are your 9 possessions after you tied the game, and you really had an opportunity to win that one against a Michigan State team that's playing pretty good. So I thought that was extremely disappointing. They have not played well in second halves for a while now, so it wasn't necessarily surprising to me, but you had an opportunity there, even with all the turnovers that you were committing all game long, and to squander it like that was just really tough because nothing was going to make their season at this point short of maybe winning the Big Ten tournament and getting into the big dance. But winning any game like we saw against Wisconsin the week before, especially against a good team, can help your spirits at least as they try to salvage what's left.
Yeah, I think the most damning thing to me about that game, like I said earlier, is that nothing about it was surprising, and that being swept by your rival in a regular season is not. It's the first time that's happened since 2018, 2019, when they played 3 times and played in that Big Ten tournament final in Chicago. But for me, when you sit there and you listen to Juwan speak, something that stuck out to me from that post game the other night was, he says we do have experience and we have guys that are new and have played together for a few months. It takes time to build chemistry. And to me, if you're fielding a roster full of true freshmen and sophomores that are still learning how to play the game, that's one thing. But Doug McDaniel, listen, I know he's missed big stretches of this season due to his suspension, which again, that's something he has to wear. And quite frankly, the program has to wear, because there are those resources there to help you stay academically eligible. But, he's a guy that played almost all of last year. Namari Burnett, I know he hasn't started hasn't been healthy a ton in college, but he's a guy that's been in college for 4 or 5 years. And Olivier Kamwa has been in college, and Terrace Reed, is nearing the end of his sophomore year. And again, to me, he's been one of, if not the only bright spots this year, at least in terms of his consistency, which this team lacks, is consistency. There are guys on this roster that they only have the one true freshman in George Washington, and he's just not ready to play yet. So when you are the guy who's in charge of shopping for the groceries and putting the roster together, and again, I have a ton of sympathy for, the heart surgery and the recovery from that. I know that's extremely difficult, no matter what people said about it. I mean, that is, that's a burden, and that's something that he has to deal with. And he's still doing physical therapy and recovery from that. But, another quote that stuck out to me, if I crack, if I explode, that's going to trickle down to the players. I enjoy coaching them. We are always looking to improve. I've never run or quit in my life. Every time and everywhere I've been, I've rolled up my sleeves and found solutions. And again, he's talking about, finding solutions to better this program moving forward. What about finding the solutions now? Because I don't see them making a whole lot of adjustments. I don't, they just don't do anything with much conviction at all. And I'm trying not to beat a dead horse here, but, even dating back to early January, it's felt like we are spiraling towards what is a needed leadership change. And that ultimately is a decision that's going to fall on the man above him in Ward Manuel, fall on that Michigan administration. And I think given the way recent events have turned out, I question if he has the conviction to make a difficult decision, because it's an administration that a lot of times has hit the easy button, whether it be, just on a number of fronts, and then being, that reactive instead of proactive. So to me, the idea that Juwan could do, they could do what they did with Jim Harbaugh and reboot the entire program except for Juwan Howard, and have that work the way it did. I think that would be administrative hubris. I really do, because Jim Harbaugh is a unique guy with a track record of winning programs. And Juwan, the further away we get from his success, the worse it's gotten. And that's troubling to me. And again, I don't want to pile on the guy, but this is college basketball. This isn't a feel-good story. This is the University of Michigan. This is the Big Ten. People pay too much money to go to these games, to make that investment now, and it's diminishing returns each night out, which is disappointing.
Yeah, and the thing, his comment about experience and how it takes time for them to mesh together, like he said that on February 18th at 10:35 p.m. Yeah. It's like that's when you're supposed to be rounding into form and playing your best basketball. And I know, I mean, yeah, he shopped for the groceries, or however you want to say it, but he also tried to get some things and got denied at the register too, right? When you look at transfer restrictions over the last couple of years, if they had Terrence Shannon on this roster, I think things would be a lot different. Now, blame falls on the coaching staff as well for not vetting that beforehand and putting your eggs in certain baskets that were never going to be able to come to fruition. So it's not like blame is solely on Juwan Howard or solely on admissions or solely on anything, but things just haven't necessarily worked out the way they would have wanted them to. And yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what Ward Manuel does after the season. He's not exactly a guy who's known to be super proactive and take charge. He's kind of been a pretty passive leader, it seems like, over his years. I think we have a big enough sample size now to be able to say that. He's obviously made some good moves. He's there've been some mistakes by the athletic department as well that, we've talked about throughout the years. So I'm interested to see, kind of what happens there. But yeah, it's got to be tough. And I don't know how much you can really do if you're that staff right now towards the end of the year. I mean, you just kind of keep coaching. I know you don't have a ton of young guys to develop, but the obvious follow-up to his comment about how things, it takes time for these guys to come together is, well, look at the roster and look how many guys are either out of eligibility or going to move on after this season. What makes you think that next year would be any different? Now, I think Juwan makes that comment knowing that he doesn't have the talent either that he would like, which is an issue. And he's not going to say that they don't have talent. So part of it, I think, is coach speak, and you can't, take too much stock into it. So not that he says a lot anyway. Most of what he says is coach speak and basically, talking without saying a ton, like a lot of coaches. So, that to me, but it just makes you think like, man, well, how is next year going to be any different when you lose likely Olivier Kamwa, Namari Burnett? I mean, you could lose other guys in the transfer portal. You could lose Terrence Williams. He has an extra year of eligibility. You didn't have him on Saturday too, which I thought hurt, and they ran out of gas. You had to see Trey Jackson play for 12 minutes. Michigan State outscored. Yeah, you had to see him play for 12 minutes, and in those 12 minutes, Michigan State won by those 12 minutes by 14 points, which is pretty hard to do. So it's almost impressive in a way. But yeah, that's my rambling. Those are my rambling thoughts.
I guess my question would be this: and again, it's impossible for us to put ourselves in this position, but let's just say you are someone that is in charge of gauging what an extra year might look like. Is there anything that they, because it certainly hasn't been done, throughout this season, but is there anything that they can do in these next it'll be 6 games, maybe 7 if they win their Wednesday night game in Minneapolis, which is certainly possible. But is there anything they can do short of, winning a Big Ten tournament and somehow getting into the NCAAs that you could even label as something to hang your hat on moving forward? Because this isn't just, this isn't like the COVID season in 2020 for football. That was a Mickey Mouse campaign that had a lot of issues that led to that. And there were some major questions to answer, but this is a total and complete bottoming out of the program. And you look at the roster and what is there to build on? What could you even take out of this season to build for next year?
Yeah. So for me, when I look at, potentially letting coaches go and all this, I don't look at it as a punishment for, losing and having, seasons that didn't work or whatever it might be, or, losing a couple games that you shouldn't have, or something like that. Like is the reaction on social media and throughout fan bases, and will always go on. And right, a lot of that interest and the passion from the fan base drives the business. So, I'm certainly not complaining as somebody who's getting a paycheck, working in college sports. But I look at it as, okay, what are the solutions to fix Michigan basketball? They're 8-18, right? I mean, something has to change. And I do think, it would be a positive. And I think Juwan Howard's probably thinking, okay, let's win the rest of the games here. Let's make a run in the Big Ten tournament. Again, mentioned Chris Holtmann and Ohio State kind of did that at the end of last year, winning some games and, gave them what they felt like at least was a little bit of momentum. But at the end of the day, what are you going to do in the future? I'm looking for solutions. And, you could think that Juwan Howard is the right guy to, continue that. That's, there's an argument to be made for anything. But I don't know that anything in the last 6+ games is going to convince me that anything would be different with what's going to happen in the future, positive or negative, right? So, they could lose the rest of these games, and I don't think it would do anything, and they could win the rest. And I think that certainly he would probably have a little bit more support, but ultimately it's about what you're going to do in the future after the season, because this season's basically wasted already. And, so I just don't think it's going to change what I would feel about it or what's going to happen. Yeah.
Right. So you look at the rest of the schedule here, they've got Northwestern on Thursday night. Ken Palm has all of these as losses. And again, Northwestern. Now, would Northwestern be the last road game without Doug McDaniel?
It should be, yeah, because then they'll be on spring break. And, apparently the 6 games is up. according to Doug,
Okay.
but they didn't put a timeline in Juwan's statement, which makes me think, maybe that he's not going to go to Minneapolis. I think that's something that we need to ask about in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at Northwestern Thursday, again, they have Purdue on Sunday. That feels like a death march. Just need to call that what it is. Go to Rutgers a week from Thursday for a revenge game with them. Then you end at Ohio State and at home against Nebraska on March 10th. So again, I think in the rosiest of, again, this Big Ten kind of stinks too. So you could win a couple games there. You could lose them all. I don't think you win them all, but who's to say? But again, I mean, the lack of.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that the end of the schedule here is not that bad outside of Purdue. Like, I wouldn't be totally shocked. I mean, we're doing the schedule game, which everyone loves to do. I wouldn't be completely shocked if they were competitive on Thursday against Northwestern. They don't have Ty Berry the rest of the year. I know they've been winning, at a decent clip even recently. But Rutgers, Ohio State, Nebraska, and you're going to have Doug in all those games. Again, he's no All-American. He's not even an All-Big Ten caliber player, but he does change what this team looks like on the floor. So, yeah, I mean, there are opportunities for a couple wins. KenPom has them losing all those games individually, but they also have them winning one more at some point, right? If you have like 4 or 5 games that you're 49% chance of winning, you're actually projected to win 1 or 2 of those. It's not 49% in each game, but they have them winning one more. I think they could win 1 or 2, but I just don't think it makes any difference.
It's the race to 10, baby. That's where we are in year 5. So